What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Are the D-backs back in the wild card race after sweeping the Seattle Mariners and answering your guys' questions on today's Mailbag Thursday?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Miller Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we're going to be talking about the D-backs sweeping the Seattle Mariners, what it means for them getting back into the wild card race. And then since we got a preview coming out for the Padres series tomorrow, a little crossover, we're moving our mailbag up a day and doing a little mailbag Thursday on today's podcast. So jam-packed pod as always. But first, want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. I try to go live on YouTube Sunday through Thursday after D-backs games. You can follow me on social media because I always tweet out before I go live at Creator Thomas 24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. If you come, watch a show live, don't be afraid to drop down a comment because it's an interactive show. I'll read your comments live on the air as the show is going on. So please follow me on socials so you see when I go live, or click that little bell icon next to the subscribe button so you also get notified when I go live. But now let's jump into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Back here on the Locked on D-backs podcast after the D-backs sweep the Seattle Mariners and have such a weird start to June because 3 straight sweeps. And the D-backs are on the positive end of 2 of them. They swept the Braves. They got swept by the Cincinnati Reds. And now they just swept the Seattle Mariners. And every time you think this D-backs team is dead in the water, every time they blow a big game via their bullpen or their offense doesn't come through, they do something like this. Start 7-3 in the month of June. And now we're asking ourselves, are the D-backs back in the wild card race? Every time I try to leave, the D-backs keep pulling me back, That is a song reference for the younger audience. You probably don't know who that is. Go look up Pulling Me Back on Apple or Spotify and then get back to me later, because that's how I feel with the D-backs. Every time I try to leave, every time I try to quit, D-backs just keep pulling me back, because D-backs go into this series against Seattle, defend their home turf, and all 3 games, you had solid starting pitching, you had solid bullpen pitching, you had offense, you had defense. Like, the D-backs really played every phase of a ball game good in this series. Was there a couple defensive mishaps like we saw today with that Ketel Marte couldn't turn the double play in the first inning? Yes, but we've also seen some elite defensive plays like Lourdes Gurriel robbing a home run in game number 2. We saw Erod quality start today. Brendan Pfaadt 5 innings, 2 earned runs yesterday, and of course, was it Merrill Kelly in the first game of the series against the Seattle Mariners? I'm already forgetting who pitched game 1 against the Seattle Mariners. But whoever it was, let me just double check that real quick. Game 1 against Seattle Mariners, that was This is good podcasting stuff. Yeah, that was Merrill Kelly. That's who I thought it was. For some reason in my head, I was like, was that Zach Gallen? No, Merrill Kelly, 6 innings, no earned runs, 7 strikeouts. And so 2 of your 3 starters gave you a quality start in this series. Brandon Pfaadt at least took a step forward in his start, right? It wasn't one of those 8 earned runs, no out kind of a performance. And so Your rotation looked good in this series. Your bullpen looked good in the series. It's one thing when your bullpen holds a lead when you're up like 7, 8 runs, but this was a 5-2 ball game for a lot of the game. And I mean, it was a 5-2 ball game, the last 3 innings, and the D-backs bullpen was able to hold on. Juan Murillo escaped a little trouble by getting a double play ball. Beeks and Shelby Miller did their job. Now the D-backs are starting to look like a real team. Their biggest question is consistency. Can they keep this going for a sustained period of time? Because the National League is just so deep, so loaded, especially the NL West, as we see 3 teams in our division fighting for that division lead. All of them are kind of just dancing around the wild card race. And so the D-backs are going to have to play great baseball to keep up with those teams in the NL West. They're going to have to keep playing baseball like you did in this series against the Mariners, like you did in this finale against the Mariners, because if we want to talk more specifically about the game, Erod and Eugenio Suarez were the 2 stars of the game. Suarez, when you look at his numbers now, with the bases loaded in 2025, because of course he had the monster grand slam in this game against Seattle. Once he came up to the plate with the bases loaded against his former team, you knew something special was going to happen. It felt like Eugenio was dancing around a home run all series. He finally got it. 410 feet, a home run in all 30 ballparks. And Suarez this season, 4 for 8 with the bases loaded, 3 grand slams, which leads Major League Baseball, 15 RBIs. And I believe they said in the broadcast, D-backs have 8 grand slams before the All-Star break, most in Major League Baseball history, which is kind of crazy. So this is a team that has definitely relied on their power, relied on home runs to create a lot of their offense this year. And Eugenio has been one of those key contributors, now tied for the team lead in home runs. And I think that all-star case between him and Manny Machado, I think it's heating up. Machado has a better slash line, but Suarez has almost double the home runs of Manny Machado, and he's at over 50 RBIs. Like, by the time we get to the All-Star break, Suarez might have like 11 more home runs than Machado and like 25 more ribbies, even though Machado might have 100 more points on his average in OPS. And so I think it's very interesting seeing those 2 guys side by side as we get closer to the All-Star break. And then Erod had his best start of the season today. 14 whiffs on 45 swings. He was throwing that fastball a ton, especially in the upper part of the strike zone, just attacking these Mariners hitters. And it made it kind of illustrated the point that I've been saying all week on the podcast. I'm not afraid of this Mariners offense at all. It's only Cal Riley we're scared of, because this Mariners offense did nothing in this series against the D-backs. And so you do have to question a little bit. Was it really the D-backs pitching, or is that Mariners offense really that bad? But it was nice to see Erod go out there, have a quality start, and look fantastic. If he can pitch closer to the level that we saw tonight, D-backs have a chance of surviving this Corbin Burns injury and really make a name for themselves in this wild card race. Because if you have Erod pitching like that, your front line of your rotation hopefully pitching like they should be. We know Merrill Kelly is. Can Zach Gallen pitch better? Brandon Pfaadt, if he can get back to the guy we saw the first 6 weeks of the season. And then Ryan Nelson, if he can pitch like the guy we've seen over the last year plus, that is a rotation good enough for the postseason. But like we keep saying, it's all about consistency for this D-backs team, the rotation, the lineup, and of course the bullpen. I think we found our closer. I think it has to be Shelby Miller, who once again had a good outing in the 9th inning today. And for once, there wasn't really any traffic. There wasn't any scares. We know when we talk about Shelby Miller, a lot of times it's like, yeah, he should be the closer, but he's going to make the situation a little scary, a little dicey before closing it out. But tonight against Seattle Mariners, he looked good. And on the season, he's been good in save situations. 2.93 ERA in save situations. And so, Shelby Miller, you are the D-backs closer. Now we'll answer your guys' questions on today's Mailbag Thursday in segment number 2. But first, I want to talk to you guys about FanDuel, because The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. Whether it's a game winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip off and live with player props, performance trends, and same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? You could track it all on FanDuel with their latest trends to give you some great stats and insight on who to lay some money down on so you can increase your pockets. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to fanduel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. And now let's do a little mailbag Thursday for you guys, answering you guys' questions. Typically, we do this on Fridays, but since we got a crossover coming tomorrow to preview the Padres series, you guys could probably already guess who we're talking to for a Padres series. We're going to do the mailbag on a Thursday. First question is from Johnny with 5 9s. He says, since you brought up familiar faces on yesterday's podcast, how do you feel about Andrew Southrank and Adrian Del Castillo? This is a great call by Johnny because these are two players that I overlooked in my segment yesterday, talking about how there are familiar faces that could come back and help out the D-backs in 2025 to get us back in the wild card race. Some of them were already recalled. Bryce Jarvis was one of them. He was fantastic last year for the D-backs, and he had like 11 less innings pitched than Kevin Ginkel last year, despite appearing in like 25 less outings. Like Bryce Jarvis was so important to the D-backs last year as a multi-inning weapon. Of course, Kevin Ginkel has been important to the D-backs the last 3 years. And then Jake McCarthy, who's been in Reno, who is having a good season down there, batting over 300. If Pavin Smith starts to slide, why not Jake McCarthy as a guy that could help out this D-backs team with his contact ability and his speed? But now we got two more players to throw on that list, and Andrew Southrank and Adrian Del Castillo, because I do think, Johnny, these are two more familiar names that definitely have a chance to have an opportunity and make a name for themselves for the D-backs in 2025. Because I look at a guy like Southrank, and with basically just Jalen Beeks as the lone lefty in the D-backs bullpen, or at least guy that you trust as the lone lefty in the D-backs bullpen. D-backs could definitely use another guy to back up Sal Frank. We used to have, AJ Puck with little Jalen Beeks, and you felt really good about those two guys. But now having basically just Beeks as the only man you're confident in, Andrew Southrank is someone where if he comes back to the level he was at in 2023, that is someone that the D-backs could definitely use in the back end of their pen. This was a guy who was popped last year for suspension, for betting on games, none that he appeared in, but he was doing some stuff he wasn't supposed to be doing. And it was disappointing because it felt like entering 2024, the D-backs wanted Andrew Southrank to be good. It felt like they wanted him to potentially maybe not win the job out of camp, but at some point get called up and make a huge impact as the second lefty in the D-backs bullpen, maybe eventually become the go-to lefty in the D-backs bullpen. But instead, he gets suspended, and we lose him for the rest of 2024. Just got reinstated like a week ago, and so he has to work his way back into shape and everything like that. But if this is a guy that gets back to the level he was at a couple years ago, the D-backs could definitely use Sal Frank in this bullpen. This is a funky pitcher with the glasses and the weird delivery, but you can't forget how critical Sal Frank was down the stretch in 2023. Just like a Ryan Thompson, he was a hidden gem that the D-backs found from their farm system, and he ended up being nails down the stretch, entering the postseason, really helped out the D-backs close out some games. And he is essentially the lefty Ryan Thompson, sinker ball pitcher, trying to induce ground balls. Like Andrew Southrank is a guy that is needed in this D-backs bullpen, especially when a guy like Ryan Thompson is starting to struggle, starting to go in the wrong direction. I would say a guy like Andrew Southrank could definitely be used in this D-backs bullpen because outside of Beeks and outside of Shelby Miller, like how many guys do you really trust in this D-backs bullpen? How many guys would you say are secure in their roles in the D-backs bullpen? Probably just two of them, right? So there's no reason Andrew South Frank, if he plays well in Reno, that he can't steal a bullpen job from one of these relievers currently on the major league level. And then with Adrian Del Castillo, it's almost the same argument as Jake McCarthy. We saw Castillo be fantastic last year in an offensive role, really crushed it for the D-backs, displayed power, displayed a really mature approach, I think, at the plate, despite being a rookie. The only issue we had with Del Castillo last year was his defense. It felt like he allowed a lot of base runners to steal on him, but in 80 at bats, he had a 313 average and an 893 OPS, 4 home runs, 19 ribbies. Like those numbers definitely play. And for Castillo, I think his bat is just straight up more pure than Pavins. I think he's a better offensive player with the power, with the contact ability. Now, defensively, they're both probably liabilities, but offensively, I think Adrian Del Castillo is better. And so, if Pavin Smith continues to slide, he had the home run today, which should save him some time to be on the major league level. But Pavin Smith continues to slide. Why not Adrian Del Castillo over Pavin as your lefty DH? Or you could still say, you know what? We just value ADC's offensive bat over Herrera's defensive glove. Let's just put Castillo on the roster over Jose Herrera. You could do that as well, but I definitely think these two guys are players that could pop up on the D-backs at some point this year. I think they will pop up, and I think they will have an opportunity to make a name for themselves. Adrian Del Castillo returned to Reno last night. Grand slam in his return to injury. Like we discussed in segment number 1, the D-backs have been the Grand Slam kings in 2025. And so Adrian Del Castillo, Andrew Salfrank, two players that would look to make their debut at some point for the D-backs in 2025 and try to help us get back into the wild card race. Speaking of the wild card race, Justin Jefferson asks, realistic chance you give the D-backs to make the wild card? And if you're asking me what percentage would I put the D-backs to make the wild card after seeing them through, around 65 games, I would say it's 50-50. D-backs right now, if you look at the standings, they're like the fourth team out of the wild card race. Of course, you got the Giants, the Phillies, the Padres as the three wild card teams as of today. Then you got the Cardinals, the Brewers, and the Cincinnati Reds all ahead of the Arizona Diamondbacks. D-backs do have a 3-game lead on the Washington Nationals, who are right after them. And so D-backs are pretty secure in their spot in the wild card race. And if you're asking me, do I think they have a chance of bumping out one of these top teams to take a wild card spot? Like I said, it's 50-50. The Giants, the Phillies, and Padres have all looked fantastic this year. And so the idea of the D-backs just straight up knocking one of them out of the playoff race just doesn't seem super likely right now. Now, where my 50% positivity comes from is I do think the D-backs are just straight up better than the Reds, the Brewers, and the Cardinals. Like, I think it's like 80-90% chance the D-backs will eventually pass those three teams. But will the D-backs pass those three teams and then also pass one of the wild card teams? That's more like a 25% chance, right? That's like a 20% chance. That's where I rationalize all that to 50-50, because I think it's a high probability that they could be the first team out of the wild card race. But I think it's also a high probability that they don't knock out one of the current wild card teams, because the Padres are absolutely loaded. The Phillies, the Giants, all of them are loaded, and all of them are going to try and make moves at the deadline. Why aren't all three of them going to be buyers, right? None of them are going to be sellers. None of them are trying to unload contracts and cash. Maybe the Padres are, but those other two teams are definitely trying to get better at this year's deadline. And so for the D-backs, I would say their odds of making the wild card right now, being 4.5 games back, I would put it at 50-50. Now I'll answer some more of your guys' questions on today's Mailbag Thursday in segment number 3. But first, I want to talk to you guys about game time, because have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where game time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, answering a few more of you guys' questions on today's Mailbag Thursday. The next one is Corbin Carroll going to get screwed on this year's All-Star ballot? It's a fun question, and sadly, it's one that I think is going to happen because if you filter the All-Star ballot by OPS, Corbin Carroll's number one among outfielders if you look at qualified guys because Ronald Acuna is technically number one, but he's also played let me see. How many games has Ronald Acuna played in this season as opposed to Corbin Carroll? Let me see. I keep accidentally hitting my Siri button. Acuna has appeared in 17 games this season. Meanwhile, Corbin Carroll has appeared in 66 games. So yeah, when you filter it by OPS, Acuna is number one, but he's played 50 less games than Corbin Carroll. Okay, so Corbin Carroll is number one among NL outfielders in OPS. But even with that being true, the way, just from anecdotally, from what I've seen on Twitter, people posting their ballots and stuff, I see a lot of Kyle Tucker and Pete Crow Armstrong, the two Chicago Cubs outfielders, on the ballot. And if those two guys are on, I just feel like it's going to be like a Fernando Tatis or someone from a big market that's a super popular player that's going to steal one of these spots from Corbin Carroll. Now, thankfully, Tatis, when you look at his numbers, they're starting to go in the wrong direction. OPS right at 800 now. Meanwhile, Corbin Carroll, OPS above 900. But I can't lie, the two Cubs outfielders feel like they're borderline locks for the MLB All-Star game. Corbin Carroll should be based off his numbers, but James Wood is having a fantastic season as well. Juan Soto still plays for the New York Mets, and it's easy to give him just a legacy All-Star game. Jackson Merrill's been fantastic this season for the San Diego Padres as well. And so it should be Corbin Carroll. You look at the numbers, and I think it's no doubt it's Corbin Carroll, but I've just seen so many people do Tatis, Pete Crow Armstrong, and Kyle Tucker as their three outfielders, or you take out Fernando Tatis and put James Wood. I'm just surprised with how often I've seen Corbin Carroll overlooked on MLB All-Star ballots, and maybe it's more anecdotally. Maybe it won't actually come into fruition once the finalists and the rosters are announced, but I'm just scared Corbin Carroll will get screwed on this year's MLB All-Star ballot. Despite, by the time we get to the All-Star break, he might have what? Because you look at Corbin Carroll's numbers right now, and you could make the realistic argument by the time we get to the All-Star break, he has a 900 OPS, 23 bombs, 15 stolen bases, and he has like double-digit triples. Like, you're going to tell me this guy's not an all-star? Just insanity by some of these voters. Next one. Does Geraldo Perdomo need to move back down in the D-backs order? This one hurts me to answer because I was the one banging the drum for Perdomo to be moved up to the number 3 slot. I was kind of saying, how can Lourdes Gurriel be your number 3 hitter? He's the worst number 3 hitter in all of the National League. But since I've made those comments, since Perdomo's been moved up, his numbers have fallen off precipitously while Lourdes Gurriel has been on a heater. But I'm still not at the point where I'm ready to move Domo back down in the order. Maybe you could convince me, but I wouldn't do it just yet because I still love Jerry's at-bats, and his plate discipline is the main reason why I like him at the top of the order, because you just see everyone else behind him. Like, maybe the big reason why everyone else has gone hot as soon as Jerry's become the number 3 hitter is because you can see his approach at the plate, see his plate discipline. When he's up there, he's going to see all the pitches, is going to be super patient, and you can see how the umpire is calling the game, the tendencies for the pitcher. Like, Perdomo just exposes so much with his at bats, and that's why I think it's a huge reason you've seen Josh Naylor start to get hot again. Suarez and Lourdes Gurriel start to get hot again all of a sudden over the last few weeks. I think a big part of it is because they're now hitting behind Geraldo Perdomo, and his bats are rubbing off on them. As much as I love Jerry at the bottom of the order, because I will say Jerry could be one of those guys where maybe he is better at the bottom of the order in terms of his production, where yes, opposing pitchers are like, hey, this number 7 guy, this number 9 hitter, I'm not as scared of you. I'm going to just, throw my best stuff. I'm just going to throw a fastball at you every time and we'll see what happens. And Jerry makes those guys, he capitalizes on those mistakes. And a lot of times pitchers might not realize Jerry is as good as he is just because he's batting in the bottom of the order. And maybe that's where he gets a lot of his production from. And so, yes, you can make the argument maybe he's a better bottom of the order hitter than top of the order hitter. But at the end of the day, his play discipline is still so elite. And that's why I wouldn't just flip flop him and Lourdes Gurriel, because even when Gurriel's on a heater like he is now, he still doesn't have a great approach at the plate. I still don't trust him to have a long 8 to 10 pitch at bat to draw a walk. Gurriel is always going to go out there swinging and hacking, and that's just the kind of player he is. That's why I still love Domo as my number 3 guy, even when he's in a little bit of a slump. But I'll take a little bit of a slump if you're a guy who is going to walk just as much as he strikes out. Like, not a lot of players in Major League Baseball can say that. Geraldo Perdomo is one of the few. 38 walks entering today's game to just 33 strikeouts. Meanwhile, Lourdes Gurriel doesn't strike out a ton, only 38 strikeouts this season, but 16 walks, half of Geraldo Perdomo. Glad to see that he doesn't strike out a ton compared to Domo, but the plate discipline is just nowhere near Jerry. Jerry just has a level of mastery, a command at the plate that I don't think anybody else potentially in this D-backs organization has. And that's why I like Jerry at the number 3 slot. If I'm going to move Jerry down in the order and make him a bottom of the order at bat, then the guy that I want to move up is probably Gabby Moreno, who's been hot over the last few weeks, who also has great play discipline numbers. But if it's not going to be Moreno, then keep Jerry as your number 3 hitter. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.